Delighted to be here with you. I have only a few minutes to share some thoughts, and so I wrote a brilliant speech that even made me cry that was lost in cyberspace about 7 this morning, not to be retrieved, and so I just will share with you the things that are in my heart. Is that all right? Yesterday, in a session, I heard K. Rita Anderson voice a sentiment that I think many of us feel. She said, "Listen, I'm not going to quit. I'm in this for the long haul." And I said to myself, in this for the long haul is a commitment indeed. Requires much more of us than what they told you when you interviewed for your job. They tricked you. I hate to, for these new people, oh, I'm so sorry. I need to tell you the truth that being in it for the long haul, for K. Rita made reference to her commitment to continue to fund and be an activist in support of anti-trafficking work, and for us it means a host of things, but it's costly and requires more than they told us in the beginning. I want to just talk to you briefly around this subject of in it to win it, strategies for thriving over the long haul. So on Tuesday, Dorothy Height's indomitable spirit was liberated from her regal and gloriously adorned 98-year-old body. Many who commented on her enduring commitment to racial justice, civil rights, women's rights, and downright right relationship across the scope of humankind used the term tireless when referring to her efforts. But I'm sure that in 70 decades of activism, she got tired. Good and tired. Sick and tired. She must have been tired of struggle when at the tender age of 16, she moved from Virginia and got accepted into Barnard College, only to find out that when her application arrived, the 2 slots for black students that they had already been filled. They wouldn't tolerate 3, and so she had to go to another school. She must have felt worn when by the age of 18, she had already demonstrated in March after March, protesting and wanting to bring attention to the lynching of black women and men in her home state. She must have been disgusted and fatigued when she graduated from college and graduate school and she joined the YWCA, the Young Women's Christian Association, only to find out that she had to attend different conferences than her white colleagues who were leading white chapters of the YWCA. She must have been downright disgusted and fatigued when, after years of organizing and investing in the civil rights movement, her one request that a single woman be allowed to address the demonstrators at the March on Washington was shot down by the boys, our beloved boy in the number of them. So let's be honest, the work of transformation that we are seeking to do, the work that we're talking about here today, the work of investing and influencing and impacting is no easy task. Dorothy worked 70 years on trying to get the world to value women as much as it values men, and the truth is the work is still not done. Our foes are fortified, experienced, and numerous. Those invested in patriarchy are aligned, if nothing else, across racial and class and religious lines. They all agree, keep us down. So those of us who continue her efforts have miles to go before we sleep, so I promise not to stay this discouraging. I'm just setting the stage. So whether or not you felt tricked when they interviewed you to be on the board and they didn't tell you that when you took the ED position, it wasn't this work of investing and changing and transforming was going to require much more than 40 hours a week, probably more like 65. Don't raise your hand. I know your boss is in the room. They didn't tell us that the work of transforming societies and ideologies and realities is painstaking. It's slow to manifest. It's demanding. So superficial change, like that represented by tokenism, is merely tolerably challenging. Hire a bright Latina as your office manager. Put a well-connected Asian woman on your board. No one is too troubled by just 1 or 2. But the real work of transformation requires that we dig deep, that we revisit our cleverly hidden biases, that we put away our politically correct falsity, and we deal with the isms that still live in us. We have to do the work personally and not just organizationally. And it refuses to be complete in our 40-hour work weeks or our well-planned program years. Transformative work visits us in our sleep. Can somebody say amen? Amen. It rides on the train with us as we come into the office. It sits with us in traffic as we commute home. It's easier, friends, to talk the talk than it is to walk the walk. It's simpler and cleaner to claim to be inclusive while retaining biases that keep us from real engagement and real collaboration with each other. When I attended my first board meeting at the Sister Fund in 2000, I was shocked. I had never been in a room with women who had the same agenda, who were so different from each other in my entire life. So sitting next to each other in the boardroom was a conservative Christian pastor and a lesbian woman who ran a watchdog organization that reported the ways that fundamentalist religious practice was eroding women's rights, sitting right together sharing potato chips. Across from them was, sharing a board term, was a nun and a Jewish activist. At the other end of the table, sitting right near one another, was one woman who ran a family foundation masterfully and another woman who lived in a trailer home that she couldn't afford to keep. On the board, all at once. Complicated business, this influence. Not easy stuff, this investment. Complex to the core, this commitment that we have to make an impact. Our work is consuming and demanding because we labor for populations who are female and old and young and poor and unemployed and underemployed and sick and trafficked and objectified. And we work in a context where funding is harder now for our grantees than it ever was to secure before. In 1 month, I sat with a grantee who told me about her panic attacks and her depression because she had to let go of 3/4 of her staff, all of whom were single heads of household. I went to a gathering at the Manhattan Borough President's Office for women who were working with women and girls and saw a bright, sharp woman who was leading a program in Harlem for young women. And I said to myself, if as a young woman I had been in a program like hers, I would be so bold and courageous and my speech wouldn't get eaten up in the computer in the morning. 3 months later, I learned that that very woman had committed suicide in her apartment. This isn't easy work and these aren't easy times. But the good news for us today is that we are here together. And the Women's Funding Network, if there is not another organization that brings us glad tidings, it is WFN today. Give yourself a hand for being here. I came 10 years ago, and I remember looking across the ballroom at the first luncheon at the first WFN meeting I attended 10 years ago, and the numbers of brown faces sitting at tables could be counted on one hand. My face was among them. And now there's nearly a brown face at every table, and I'm so grateful. 10 years ago, I went to my first conference, philanthropic conference, and I sat with a well-esteemed man of color and a well-esteemed woman of color in the funding realm, and they picked apart when I confessed my Christianity, my religious belief. Told me the ways in which it wouldn't allow me to be a real activist. And today we have collaborations across sectors, secular and faith-based. If I were going to do a plug for the Virginia Slims commercial, I would tell WFN, Christine Grum and her fine staff, you've come a long way, babies. So sisters, in spite of the hard work and the challenge and the difficulty, which I promise you, if you have not encountered yet, you shall encounter. You'll encounter it in working with one another in staffs of women. You'll encounter it in working with board members who are demanding and want to micromanage you. You'll encounter it in trying to raise funds for grantees and work with other grantees. You'll encounter it when you're disappointed because someone that you worked for no longer believes in you, or someone that you tried hard for passed you over when it was time for a promotion. Disappointment is going to come, but there are a few strategies that I think can help us thrive over the long haul. Can you hang in here with me for a few more seconds?